This is the Inner Chief Podcast, episode 315.
And I remember speaking to one of the founders of the business when I first joined, and I thought I was busy. And I said to him exactly that. I said, look, I'm busy. I've got emails and calls and all this sort of thing. So I can't imagine how you do it. He said, well, you just don't prioritize it. You focus on the wrong thing. Just and just shrugged his shoulders. I'm like, wow, thanks. And it took time.
G'day, this is the Inner Chief Podcast, episode 315. Our guest today is Managing Director of SAP Concur in ANZ, Fabian Calle, on being agile in large corporates, leading as an introvert, and the career skills obtained from martial arts.
I am your host, Greg Layton, founder of Chiefmaker and the Council of Chiefs, and I believe there is a great chief in all of us, and that through listening to the stories, strategies and techniques of great CEOs, each of you can find and leave your own legacy through your work. The Inner Chief Podcast is where you will learn how to think and make moves like a CEO. For over a decade, I've helped CEOs and senior executives around the world boldly lead change, inspire their people and leave a legacy. So every 2 weeks, I'll bring a deep diving interview with one of these CEOs or another one of a mid to large organisation so you can find your own path to greatness as an executive.
In this episode, I chat to Fabian Calle. Fabian is the MD of SAP Concur Australia and New Zealand. He has over 15 years experience working with small and medium businesses in the computer software industry in a wide variety of roles. He comes from a magic background on farms in regional Victoria and is a keen martial arts enthusiast, having completed in karate, Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where he recently claimed the national title after only 6 years of practicing the sport. Today, you're going to hear Fabian talk about how working in the family business, making boxes of strawberries for 2 cents each, shaped his work ethic, manifesting agility and ideation in a large corporate organisation. Fabian articulates a wonderful story about creating a new product that led it being 30% of SAP's global revenue. He will talk about the exact strategy he uses to manage his energy and get people to follow him as an introverted leader, and the incredible life and leadership lessons he has had from honing his craft as a martial arts competitor.
Chief, one of the core skills of all great chiefs is the ability to interview and recruit the very best performers to your team. Now, many chiefs say to me that they get up to 25 or even 40% of their recruitment decisions wrong. Now, many of you who listen to this show will know that over the last 6 years, we have asked dozens of CEOs what is their number one interview question when recruiting for senior roles. What we have done is turn that into an invaluable resource. It is the 30 most powerful interview questions used by CEOs to hire high performers. These are the questions that reveal the true nature of the person in front of you. They are the ones that give or create that truth-telling moment that will help you decide whether to hire or not. Chief, if you want this resource, just go to chiefmaker.com/interview and just pop in your details and download the detailed PDF.
Chiefs, please welcome Fabian Calle. Okay, Chiefs, I'm here with the one and only Fabian Calle, MD of SAP Concur, SMB. Fabe, mate, I've known you for a decade and I can't wait to get into this, my friend. Welcome to the Inner Chief Podcast.
Yeah, likewise, Greg. We've been talking about this for a little while, so I'm excited for it.
Yeah. Hey, mate, look, you know the tradition. We love to know where our CEOs come from. Can you tell a bit of a story that sums up your childhood and early life?
Oh, okay. Look, I come from a migrated family. My grandparents migrated here in 1949.
Yeah, wow.
Came through with most of their family, and had a little bit of money behind them. And the first thing they did was buy a truck. And amongst them, they had they knew that they could grow some fruit and vegetables. So a few of the brothers went out and bought some land, had some land, grew some fruit and vegetables, while my grandfather said that he would take the truck and sell it into the market. And that business is still going now, some 74 years later.
Wow.
Down from my grandfather, who also had his father with him, to his son, and now onto his other son, who's obviously my cousin. So,
Wow.
And look, my father, he was a very successful real estate agent, had his own agency by the age of, I think it was in his early 20s.
Mm.
And obviously when he married my mother, they had me. Now, I was born in May. My father at the time was 28, and 5 months later, went to bed one night, woke up the next day, couldn't walk, paralyzed from the waist down.
What?
Suffered from MS, which we didn't know about, clearly. Like I said, he'd only just turned 28, just had me. Wow. So I was only 5, or whatever, how many months that is, 5, 6 months old. And then, later when they separated, met my stepfather, whose name I actually took when I turned 21. So, and he's like an amazing human. But both of them and my grandparents right through, both of them had a very, very strong emphasis on hard work. They had us working. Remember, they had me working young. So I basically grew up on a farm, which was amazing. Really was amazing. And I'm sure we'll get into a bunch of life lessons and leadership and things like that I got from that. But my mother was heavy into fitness. To the point where I think she did aerobics probably 3 times a day when aerobics was popular. My stepfather had he played high level football or soccer. In Spain, I think he played like second division soccer over there. And then he was an amateur boxer too. So that's obviously like been influential on me getting into all that. And I've been like an avid proponent of fitness and exercise and martial arts and all those sort of things since I was a little kid. But I think one of the memories I have as a child was, obviously when my grandparents migrated here and the family started to migrate, they all lived very close to one another. And, I remember the days of, the whole community. I mean, we lived, there was a whole block, and I think I was related to every second home there. and we'd get together, the whole community would get together. There was always somebody who knew how to play the piano accordion really well.
Wow.
There was always some, people who were members of the church choir. Now, individually, they couldn't sing very well, but when you get them together, I think they could just balance each other out. But they're my memories of a child getting to like big communities and friendships, family, and but all built around like hard work. Nearly every member of the family was a farmer, and a lot of my good friends as I grew through school, they still run farms and businesses today, and very successfully too. Now, I had an option to join my parents' business, knowing that since my grandfather was here, they've had their own business only. They've never worked for anybody. So it was probably just a natural progression that I would move into that. But my parents were, they encouraged me to get out and do my own thing. If I had to get up and work on the farm and the wholesale business, I probably could have. But they said it's a real tough slog. Go out and do your own thing. And I did. And I did. And I think you did it right. Yeah. Well, obviously, mate, obviously. It's all of that has shaped me into being the father I am too. So I have 2 boys, 2 amazing boys. And I took a bit from both. So my biological father, him and I stopped communicating when I was about 24 for varied reasons. And my stepfather, like I said, I took his name. Both of them just like filled an amazing gap for me that I could draw some really cool things. Sometimes I wish I knew earlier of, how I want to be a dad.
Yeah. Let's just, before we're going to come back to that particular point, because I think that will be something that you and I both be dear to my heart too, having been the father of two boys. The first ever job you had on the farm, what did
First
they have
ever
you
job.
doing?
This one I know.
Yeah.
We, back then, so we're talking a little while ago, so I was born 74. There wasn't a lot of automation back then, that's for sure. And we specialized, the family specialized in growing strawberries. So you had to make boxes for these strawberries.
Yep.
And that was all done by hand. So I had the pleasure, let's call it that, of getting paid 2 cents for every box that I made. And I was 9 years old. And it wasn't long after that I got paid 5 cents a box. So more than doubled my salary. You know, I'd make a few hundred boxes a day and walk away with $4. I mean, that was amazing.
Wow.
That's
a good lolly bag, man. That's like,
that's it.
In my time, that was at least 8, maybe 10 lolly bags.
That's exactly right. And that's my first memory of my first job.
Yeah, fantastic.
My first corporate job, I was 21. So I did the whole thing of working in a men's store when I was 15 and working at what was Safeway back then, which is now Woolworths. And the first job I ever had, I was 21. I worked for a Russian shipping company called Fesco. And I was a data analyst. And when I went for the interview, Greg, the salary was $30,000 a year then. I was so desperate just to get into the corporate world, because I thought, if I can just get into the corporate world, and that was in 95, I think, I knew then I could make my way through to a path that I wasn't even sure what I was going to go through, but a path I followed. So data analyst, the salary was $30,000. I said to them, I'll take $20,000 if I get the job. They ended up offering me, I was driving home. I clearly remember I was driving home, and they offered me $21,316 a year before tax. So I took it. And that was my first corporate role. And that was literally just entering container numbers into spreadsheets.
Yeah.
All day. For nearly 2 years.
Well, the good thing is you'd gone from doing strawberry boxes all day. Now you're doing container numbers all day. So you had a little system here of you were good at doing the repeat work, right?
That's right. I started to truly understand what process was about.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, mate. Look, let's get into your career in a second. Final question we ask most of our chiefs: what was your first ever car? You bought with your own money.
Yeah, a light blue Nissan Bluebird station wagon with cream interior, and I think it cost back then, I think it was about $3,800.
Fantastic.
Of course it was a manual shift. Of course.
Yeah, of course. Back then they all were. Yeah, fantastic. Okay. So look, you've had a bit of a varied career. We're going to come back to the SAP role. You've been there for quite some time and growing in this role. But for a while there, you did go out on your own and you actually ran an ice bar in Melbourne. Tell a bit of the story of that. Quite a few of our listeners would probably remember this bar if you were ever in Melbourne. But tell us a bit about the story and how did that come about and the entrepreneurial kind of spirit that got lit within you?
Yeah, so as much as I want to take all the credit for it, my business partner, friend at the time, he came to me with that idea. And it was a really interesting partnership that we had, because he was one that really wanted to do things differently. Right?
Yep.
We wanted to own a bar. The bar thing was kind of cool, pardon the pun. But in Melbourne, there were so many bars. Like, how do we do something that was completely different? And he came up with that concept. Then it was a matter of like, how do we make this work? I mean, because we both come from corporate backgrounds. We knew nothing about hospitality. Not behind the bar anyway. In front of the bar, yes. We knew lots about that.
Yeah.
But the great thing about him is that he never took what was just the status quo as being the way it should be. Now, he provided a lot of that creativity and that really that take no, not take no for an answer part of our partnership. and I was more of the back end office. So that, I mean, I'm somewhat risk adverse, but not like he was. So it was a really cool combination, a bit of a balance. We went through eight business plans. Eventually, back then, NAB took a risk on us because it was, I mean, we were eventually selling a giant freezer full of furniture that was made of ice. And it was a really difficult concept for the banks to truly understand. But we knew it would work. We found someone that would help us. And then the thing that was probably best about the whole concept and what we wanted to do is, because we didn't come from a hospitality background, we weren't really tied to the way things are done. You know, there was a foundation of what needed to be built. But in the end, we thought it's a completely different bar. There isn't anything like that at all in Melbourne, and Melbourne loves a novelty. So we said, you know, what we also need is to hire staff that do not come from that industry either. So as an example, one of the best hires we made, he was a baker. But he came with all the right, he came with the right profile. See, he worked late, he worked long, hard hours, but we weren't tied to, this is the way it's meant to be. And look, and for the first few years, it really blew up, and it's still going. When we separated, my business partner, you know, continued with that business, and I took a different path. But I think what I learned from that was we didn't really have to do things the way it's always been done. And just because it's done a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that's the way it's going to work for us. So look, we had great fun. I was in it for about 3 years. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about me as a leader, the type of people that we would hire, like how things would work and why. Partnerships, as in business partnerships, and what we really needed from a business that we owned. I think the challenge was, you know, as many people would know when they run their own business, you're on all the time. It's all the time. You know, a lot of people will say, I'd love to own my own business so I can work for myself. There's always something.
There is always something.
You know, in the end, I would walk into the bars, because we had two. So we had a nice bar downstairs and we had another cocktail lounge upstairs. But you'd always walk in and see things that needed to be fixed. Things that were going wrong, or things that could be better. And it was that. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot from owning my business.
You mentioned a couple of key things there, like you don't always have to come with the same perspective as the industry, right?
Now, Chief, do you want to take your game to a new level, or that of your people? Our mini MBA in leading high performance teams now has the highest NPS of any mini MBA style program in Australia at 91. Why? Because when you do the program, you get immediate and tangible performance improvement. You get dedicated time working on the business as opposed to away from it. We have a practical, real-world approach that we teach frameworks that you implement in your business as we go, and then you share and learn with your peers and with me as your coach. So the cost benefit is immediate, right? The weekly coaching sessions are live, and you get a chance to ask questions direct to me and of your peers. And the time management is completely achievable because you're only spending a couple of hours a week on this at max, and those 2 hours are actually working on the business. So if you want to add something that really changes your game, it helps you become a real master of transformation and change, and to inspire your people and love your job, check out chiefmakeup.com/mini MBA.
Look, but now you work for this giant global behemoth, SAP, and one of the great challenges big companies face is the ability to think differently about an industry or a sector just because of their pure size. They lose that adaptability and agility, and just because they need to manage risk, right? It becomes hard to see things differently. How do you bring that into the work you do now, right? Actually, just before we do, can you clarify that what SAP Concur does, and then maybe go to that?
So SAP in itself is one of the world's leading producers of software for management of all business processes. So that's SAP very, very simply as an umbrella. And SAP Concur within that we help manage all the employee spends, anything from travel, entertainment and expenses, and invoice processing. So I look after the SAP Concur expense management, invoice processing components, all the employee spend. So that's what I do.
Yep. Yeah, great. Okay, so here you are in this behemoth, right, that runs software all over the world, ERP and a whole range of the subcomponents of that. How do you bring those lessons from the ice bar into this kind of world?
Yeah, great question. Because I think that's one of the reasons why I connected with you initially, right?
Oh, right.
to help me with this. and look, and just a bit of promotion for you. And I think I must have gone through 10 different people I was looking for that would understand this exact thing that we're about to talk about. So when I first joined, we were a standalone Concur. We weren't part of SAP. SAP acquired us in 2014. And you're right, back then, before it was an SAP, we did have a lot more agility and some entrepreneurial flexibility, let's call it that.
Yep.
Still within quite a large business. Now we move into SAP, where there are a lot more stringent conditions around the way we need to work. Now, I don't manage SAP's P&L or balance sheets or anything like that. The one thing I can control, however, is the people and the culture and the environment within the group that I manage. I mean, at the end of the day, we are managing employee spend. It's not the most fancy business to be in, but I do love it. I love what we do for businesses too. So I think one of the things that I had to consider, and within the hint of what is SAP, even within SAP Concur itself globally, Greg, I only contribute about 3 to 4% of our total revenue. Sometimes I call it simply a rounding error, right?
Yeah, sure.
So how do I make my team, and I've been, over the years, I've managed anywhere between 60 to 100 people, give or take. How do I make them significant in a business that we only contribute 3 or 4% of the revenue? Because ultimately it comes down to revenue.
Sure.
So what I was able to do, and I think one of the things that we are known for within my own business globally, is that we have the ability to try new things. Because if it doesn't work, I'm not going to pull down the whole company. But if it does work, we may be able to find the 1 or 2 things that the company may say, hey, because there's such a big beast and it takes a long time for them to turn, we're able to maybe take a different process. Maybe we can try new processes. And we have done those things. So we've launched new products. And when I say new products, there are some products that weren't really being focused on at a global level. We took a chance on some, and now it generates this particular product that I'm talking about, which is our invoice processing, generates anywhere between 20 to 30% of our total revenue globally. When we looked at that, it was generating less than 5%. But we needed to prove that it worked in order for the company to invest in that. So we were able to do that. How do I take things from my own business into that? I needed people to believe in me. To believe that we could actually do this and what it meant. There's other parts of our business that are now what we call standard processes that all came from Australia. So it was a matter of trying to find out, how can I make my tiny little business incredibly influential and successful, and bring people along with me, and I mean, ultimately, when we come down to what I think about leadership, we may get into that a little bit more. It's about the people. And I know that's cliche.
For a good reason, but expand.
Exactly. The one thing that I can control, and this is one of the reasons why I came to you in the first place, was how do I truly believe that people want to follow me? Why would they even want to? And how do I get them to believe that we can actually make a difference when at face value, our contribution is not insignificant. It's very small from a revenue perspective, because at the end of the day, we're a giant sales engine.
Yeah,
That's what we do. We just happen to do that through a technology platform.
Yeah, sure.
So being able to understand people, truly understand people, has been important. But along that journey of understanding people, I have learned probably more about me than I have about other people.
I want to dive into this a bit, Fabian. The number of people out there with this sort of imposter syndrome kind of thing, like why would people follow me? It's everywhere, right? There's a few different angles on this we might go into. But what did you do? What was one thing you did that helped you go get people to think, hey, this is the pathway forward, to believe in you? One practical thing that maybe you did.
Yeah, I think one of the lessons I learned was, when I say I learned about me, and it was that I realized how deep of an introvert I am.
Yes.
Because I tried to be something that I wasn't, and you helped me through that. So what I learned about that was, I don't have to be the smartest person in the room at all, but I do know what I'm good at. I had to find out what I was good at. And I think you asked me that question. You said, what's the one thing you're good at? And I had to be very, very specific with that. Once I learned that, I realized that there are many other people that are much smarter than me, bring amazing skill sets, that they're the ones that should be promoting this, not me. I can come up with an idea, but they're the ones and once I gave them ownership of certain parts of the business, then they were my voice through the rest of the business.
Yep.
So in order to get the people to sort of back me, so to speak, I needed a support network. I trust. Because once I can, I guess it's like a bit of a network. I used to say to people, like, run your own little groups. Of myself as a franchise, have lots of people out there doing the things that you need to do to help you, and they did that. So what I found was they started to become the creative parts of the engine. They started to promote it because they had ownership for it. Now, strategically, what we had to do with some of those is we had to find very specific people that we hired into the business who brought certain skill set, which we did. Some of the people we found, I actually looked at their CV. I remember calling my boss at the time. I said, I don't know if this is true, what I'm reading here, but I don't think I could get a better blueprint for the person underneath here. And that just, what we started to do was, rather than sort of build skill set, we effectively bought skill set. And that just created this beautiful momentum of process changes, energy, ideas, creativity. And then the next minute, I found myself really just sitting in a meeting room, not really saying a lot, and everyone else was buying into that.
You've said a couple of times now, you found a bit of a blueprint for the right person. I think you mentioned the baker in the ice bar. Now you've got this other blueprint. And what strikes me is you are leveraging the power of people who don't know the industry and aren't bound by the norms and what everybody normally does to break the shackles. And as a result, you are getting these micro innovations on things like a product that no one was using and is now 30% of revenue global. And that's really interesting and really cool. You also spoke a bit about, learning to really be comfortable with being the introverted leader, which you've really grown into and just awesome at it. What else did you learn about things like energy in managing this particular part of your personality?
I didn't know this at the time, but I played football, AFL footy. And at that point, I was captaining our football team. One of the hardest things I found was every Tuesday at training and Thursday at training and then Saturday before the game, and then that I had to be the one that was yelling and screaming and getting everyone revved up. As an introvert, that's the worst thing in the world. I want to sit back, and I've never been one to need someone to fire me up or whatever. The discipline comes from I'm either there or I'm not. And then what I used to do at that time, I thought, how do how do I get out of this?
Yeah,
And
sure.
what I started was promoting other people, my vice captain, deputy captains, other people who were, maybe up and coming leaders, to take that front line and talk. I didn't realize this at the time, but I was doing that as a coping mechanism for me. But what I also learned was I'm now developing them and giving them the front line and creating a brand for themselves. And, as I moved on, it was weird. It was funny to see some of these people then move on into, captaincy roles and things like that too. So that's what I started doing even here.
Yeah.
I started to get the other people to promote them, and it was genuine. My intent was genuine in getting them to promote, but I didn't realize this at the time, that I was actually using that as a coping mechanism for myself. Now, what's helped me even more so, once I discovered this more deeply about the type of personality I am, is I realized that my exercise played a huge part in that, which is one of the reasons why, and many people in the business will wonder why I used to get up so early in the morning, but I needed that time to get my energy up. I needed the start of the day to be about me, my time, my energy. Even when I used to get up as early as I possibly could before my kids would wake up, because I needed that to get me through the day. And if I could do that, then I could focus on time of the day. But I also understood when I was sort of starting to struggle with a bit of that time. And it would be, sometimes we would have huge events, big sales kickoffs, there'd be thousands of people, the Aussies would come in and we'd be the flavor and people all over you. And I'm like, this, I'd duck off for 5 or 10 minutes sometimes, just go off, have a breather, come back. And I used to understand that was just what I needed, to have 5 or 10 minutes away, come back, and I've got probably another 2 hours. But I used to battle that, thinking that no, because I'm the leader, I need to be yelling and screaming, and I need to be the one cheering, and I need to be the front line all the time. And I was forcing myself to be something I wasn't. So I come across awkward on the screen. A bit different if I'm in a conversation with you, Greg, and I've known you for a long time. I don't feel like an introvert.
Yeah.
But when I'm standing out in front of a lot of people, that's when you start to think, well, what does anyone really, what could I possibly teach somebody? And there's obviously, there must be something, because I'm still here.
You're still there, still getting promoted.
But I had to find I had to find some mechanisms and processes. And I did all that from study and understanding. And, years ago, we didn't even know what an introvert was. But what's really interesting is that my eldest son is a really heavy introvert. And I see a lot of the traits in him where we would think, why is he being so shy? Or as opposed to, no, he just needs that for, he needs that for his energy. That's how he gets his energy. And someone explained it to me as coins. And an introvert wakes up with, let's say, 5 coins. And then as we get to people, they take a coin away, by the end of the day, I have none left. And an extrovert's the other way. They start without any coins and they're just around collecting as many as they can by the end of the day. What I needed to do was really manage my time and my productivity, where I would focus my energy. I do believe in things like decision fatigue. So I really had to be very specific around what I did and didn't pay attention to. And I remember speaking to one of the founders of the business when I first joined, and I thought I was busy. And I said to him, exactly that. I said, look, I'm busy. I've got emails and calls and all these sort of things that I can't imagine how you do it. And he said, well, you just don't prioritize. That's all. You focus on the wrong thing. And just shrug his shoulders. I'm like, wow, thanks. And it took time, but I think together with all of that and understanding productivity and, and using the right tools, that I cope okay. The interesting thing is when many years ago, I did a 360 survey in the business. And one of the things that came back was that I'm a bit standoffish when I first met me. And I'm like, am I? I thought that's a bit strange, because I'm Italian, so a hug, everyone's getting a hug. But what it was me, I didn't truly understand my energy at that point, and how I built that. And that came through as 360. This was only a bit over 10 years ago. Probably about 12 years ago. That helped me really understand, well, why are people thinking that when that is the complete opposite of
Yeah.
what I actually feel.
Mm, mm. Hey, one of the things that you've mentioned a few times now is, your fitness when you were young, martial arts, AFL, and going back a few years now, around about 10 years, you took up jiu-jitsu. And recently, now you've gone all the way and won the Australian Championship. Like that, I mean, that's an enormous achievement. Can you tell us a bit about the journey on that? Because it's a hard sport, right? It's not for the faint-hearted. And in 1 minute, you're this happy Italian introverted guy that loves cuddling people, and then at times 10 minutes later, you're cuddling people in a very different way. First of all, how do I know what's the difference? No. Just can you talk a little bit about the journey with jiu-jitsu and why now it's so important for you?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think like sport's always been a part of my life, some kind of sport. And when I was born with talipes, so clubfoot. And back then there really wasn't a way. People didn't really know about it, so it's never healed correctly. So I have like challenges with balance and all that sort of stuff, especially when I get fatigued. It was the same when I played football. I had so many injuries on that one side simply because my foot didn't land properly. And my parents at the time did what they could with the tools and understanding that they had. So it's not still a club foot, but it's, let's say it's about 85%.
Yep.
So I've always had some kind of sport involvement in sport. As I mentioned in the beginning, my father was an amateur boxer. That's how I got into, I think, into martial arts.
Yep.
Started with karate and all those sort of, everyone starts with karate and,
yep.
They get through that. And as I was finding my way through, I found a sport called Muay Thai, which is Thai boxing. I did that for nearly 20 years. But as I started getting on, I really struggled with balance. Tired of the balance. And as I'm getting older, like things are starting to wear and tear. And next door to where I was training, there was a jiu-jitsu. And I thought, how hard could it be? I've been doing martial arts all my life. How hard could this possibly be?
Yeah.
And in a recent interview I had too about this, I remember my first class, I got someone who was 2/3 my size. And as I was quoted in that article, I literally folded me up like I was nothing. And I couldn't believe it. I thought, I have to know this. I really have to know this. And I think like one of the like leadership traits I take from that, I'll take into it, is like just to be a continuous learner. I love the fact that I had something that I was absolutely a novice in. I knew nothing about. That was and I was 43 when I first took that up. So what we're talking about 6 years ago when I first took that up. Then there was a bit of on and off between with COVID and that, when we couldn't train. But I do love being super uncomfortable. And I think from that, it's because we know that we grow when we're in uncomfortable situations. And I just really liked that situation where I was in something that I knew nothing about. Now I have something that I could probably do forever. So that's when I thought, I'm just going to compete. So I think I was training for about 3 months. My coach said to me, you should compete. I had no idea what I was doing. And I think I came second in that, which sounds good, but there was only 2 people in the event. You can take that as you want. But then as I progressed through, I really started to enjoy knowing about me more so. And look, I don't think there's anything more intimidating, Greg, than somebody walking into a room where people are doing martial arts, whether it be kickboxing, MMA, as popular as it is now, or jiu-jitsu or the like. And I've come across some people that are very dangerous humans, very unassuming, really unassuming, but beautiful, humble people. And it's just opened up a whole new world to me. And I've taken a lot from it. A lot of people ask, what did I learn about leadership in business? I think most of the lessons I learned were either from football or martial arts, especially now in jiu-jitsu. And it's just like, you just come across so many people, different people. And there's no real prejudice in there too. Like and you share a moment with someone when you're almost at your most vulnerable, and that I think is something that a lot of people don't get to experience. And I love that. I love that about it. So when it comes to jiu-jitsu, as you said, we hug in a completely different way. I trained just today, and there were some moments I thought, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And there were other times I thought, yes, no, this is amazing.
This is amazing.
And they become some really stressful situations where ultimately it's up to you. You give up. The ultimate form of a win is when you make somebody give up. And you have to be humble with that. So when I come to work, this isn't stressful. That's really
it's all relative, right?
Yeah, it's exactly right. And it's a good balance for me. It's a good challenge for me, even as an introvert, to go into these environments where there's lots of people and they all want to talk, and I'm like, I just want to train a little bit. But it's a time that I can just escape. I can just get away from everything that's happening in that day because I have to, because I've got someone who's trying to break my arm. And it's a really nice, humbling moment for me. But I feel it. If I don't go for, look, Greg, if I'm not there for 2 weeks, I feel like I'm a completely different person. And my mood becomes a little bit different. My fuse becomes a little bit shorter because you just need an outlet, and that just happens to be one.
Yeah, sure. There's something about martial arts that is so, try and get the right wording here. It puts a little bit of a magnifying glass on your weaknesses, because you absolutely, you might be able to walk in and you might even look good, doing some forms or, practicing stuff with a bag. But as soon as you start sparring or actually fighting, it's the most honest form of sport. There's no hiding. You can't pretend. That's why there's no egos, because an ego lasts about 3 seconds. Although maybe there are a few examples of some pretty amazing fighters with huge egos, but they also had sort of justified that, right? And you don't really get that at the local club. Maybe on the big scene when there's big purses, but there is something there that is incredibly, it's humbling, but it drives you to learn quickly.
Yeah, look, I mean, you're right. I think, and that's why I chose to compete. Now, I haven't competed this year, for injuries and time and those sort of things. But next year, I will. I absolutely will. But there's a different. You're 100% right. There's a completely different thought process to people who train in the gym, and they're amazing in the gym, to now put you in. You're right. One of the most vulnerable situations you can be in front of thousands of people. It's just you and another person, and everybody's watching you. One tiny little mistake could end the whole event for you. And it's that strategic, it's that strategy of learning and understanding that when it does become successful for you, the feeling's absolutely incredible. I mean, there's times when, I've won, and at the end of it, I just want to cry. Like, this is emotion.
Relief, right? Exactly,
the pride and exactly relief. Right. Yeah. And I have a thing where I don't let anyone I know knowingly come and watch me, because I don't want to hear their voices. Because when there's a voice, there's a big crowd of people, and you can hear that voice that I don't want to hear that. I don't want people to say to me, "Done a great job," and I know that's the real introvert. Like, I'm just in my own thing. Let me do this. But there's a different level between being good in the gym, and being a very good competitor, because there's no way out when you're a competitor. You're either all in. It's either going to work or it's not. The thing I learned about being competitive, though, is no one really cares whether you lose except for yourself. Your coach just hopes you expects you to do the best you can. Your family just wants you to be safe. And hope that you can fun.
Now
that's what everyone says. You did great. You tried. I mean, okay, but getting into competition, it's just a completely different level. That's why I have respect for them, and and I but it works into my personality too. So my coach, I train at a gym called Absolute MMA, and my coach, Ollie over there in Collingwood. I meet with him privately once a week, as often as we can each week. And he takes a video of of a role that I've had. And then we dissect it. We go through, these are the things you could have done, you should have done, and we problem solve. And I love that part of it. I love the part of problem solving. It's very, a lot of it's situational, conceptual, and that's exactly how I like to learn. So just from that perspective, and I think I'm kind of lucky I found a good coach in that sense. It works well with how I like to learn. It's physical, so I still get to keep fit. I'm usually one of the oldest people in the room at the time. I think there's only there's a couple of other guys that come along every now and again, and I'm glad when they're there because they're not the eldest. But I definitely bring up the average age, that's for sure. But that part I enjoy too. I like being, I'm almost about to turn 50, and kind of go against the grain of what you're supposed to do when you're 50.
Righto, Chief. More from Fabian in a minute. Now, recently in our Best Of series, we had the Chief Growth Officer of the Australian Computer Society, Siobhan O'Sullivan. We spoke about customer experience, looking at yourself in the mirror and accelerating your career. Here's what Siobhan had to say about self-confidence.
Well, it's like you can't have a proper relationship until you love yourself. It sort of emanates from the same thinking. You are the centre of any transaction, whether it be personal or work. And if you don't know yourself, you don't feel you're at the best capability, development levels, it starts with you. You've got to look in the mirror. There's actually a great poem about the man in the mirror, and being able to say positive things about yourself and knowing who you are and being responsible for the person you look in the mirror at, and being able to lie down at night calmly and happy.
You can listen to that incredible chat with Siobhan O'Sullivan by going to chiefmaker.com/314. Chief, let's get back to Fabian Calle of SAP Concur. Fabian, this has just been outstanding, mate. I can't thank you enough for sharing your story. We have a few closing rapid fire questions. Right? Okay. What has been the most valuable learning program of your career outside of work?
I'm going to go back to the football one. Anyone who's ever played football or a sport know that you want to play in the senior team. This is before I became the captain, and I was in and out of the team. Like make one little mistake, my coach, would pull me out and then bang, I'd be in the reserves, and it was frustrating. And then one year I thought, I need to be undeniable then. I can't give you a reason to ever take me out. And that's on me, not on you. That's not your fault. You're just doing your job. So I went through and I thought, what are all the things that I needed to change? I went through and changed them all. Obviously, a few years later, I became the captain, so clearly it worked. But I think from that lesson then, I thought I truly understood what it was to be accountable for my own actions and my own growth and experiences and all that sort of stuff.
Agency.
That was from back in 90. I don't know, that would have been 98, 99, mate. Back then.
Yeah. Just a couple of years ago now.
That's it.
Hey, you mentioned before that one of the founders of Concur shrugged his shoulders at you one day and said, you're a bit of all over the shop. So many leaders these days are so busy, right? They don't have time to work on the business. What's your no bullshit counsel for them, mate?
I mean, he told me that. He goes, you don't prioritize enough. But I think what you have to do is what I did, I found my non-negotiables.
Yep.
And when I found those, I didn't just apply them to work. I apply them even to things that I eat. It actually makes decision making a lot simpler, because as things come across, I'm like, no, I don't. This does not fit in with the plan and the strategy that I have, whether it be for that week, month, or year. But you got to find those non-negotiables, and when you find those, it's amazing how much time it frees up. Even things down to emails. There are certain emails that I know that I will and won't read as they come in. Simply because of the way they headed it, whether they put me in the to column or the CC column. And it's the amount of time it saved that allowed me to then blocks of during the week. And I might put in a couple of hours in a week where it's just about how do I make my business better.
Yeah. And that's a non-negotiable for you.
It's a non-negotiable, yeah.
Every week, a couple of hours working on the business. Outstanding. Right.
Yeah.
What is the best advice a mentor or coach has ever given you?
A manager once said to me, stop trying to be so perfect. Get it 80% right, and we'll work out the rest. Because otherwise you'll never do anything. And he was 100% right. And I thought, wow, I've been procrastinating on these things for a long time that we were talking about. And it was amazing. From that point on, I decided that let's get as much as we can get right, whatever it might be. things just moved really quickly. And, as things move quicker, then it opens up opportunities for other things to come in a lot sooner too. So it was that. Stop trying to get everything right. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah. True. Fabian, can you make a distinction between people who are highly successful and those that aren't? And by what I mean by that is, what is the difference that makes the difference?
I get asked this a lot, Greg, and look, and the way I share with people, because everybody has a bad day. Everyone had their individual challenges. They deal with adversity in their own way. They have self-doubt, injuries, if it's a sporting analogy. But the best don't dwell for too long. They look at it, they get their emotion, they understand what it is, but then they pass, and then they just get on with it. And the thing is, what I find unsuccessful people, let's call it those that are good, and the difference of those that become great is those that are good, when they spend a lot of time just dwelling on the situation as to why. Where those that become great, they understand what happened and they move on. And you can imagine spend the amount of time that each would spend over a week or a month or a given year. Those problems they've spent like a long time thinking about. So the great ones have that same initial emotion, and then they assess it and they get on with it. And they just do not spend so much time in that space that I think the good people do.
Yeah. What is your number one interview question when looking for senior members of your team?
The one I ask all the time is, tell me something about you that I cannot read in the CV.
Nice. I like
and
it.
It's amazing what people tell you.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah,
it's amazing.
I bet.
It's amazing what they tell you. Some of them tell you things they probably shouldn't.
Well, that's part of it. That's
the reason why
I think
asked the question.
Yeah. I bet. Okay, what's your number one book or podcast recommendation?
Probably one of the latest ones I've read is Essentialism, the discipline pursuit of less by Greg McCown. That one.
Yeah, nice.
I love it.
Okay, if you could lead any company in the world other than SAP Concur, right? Not available to you, what is the number one company?
Look, I think with my martial arts passion, it'd have to be the UFC.
UFC, there you go.
Yeah.
Not fun. WWE, surely.
Oh, I mean, without getting into the whole thing, they've now joined under one umbrella. So
they have actually just recently. Yeah. Okay. What is a final message of wisdom and hope for the next generation of chiefs?
Look, I think it's okay to be vulnerable, and you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. The thing I love the most about the position I'm in is when we have a lot of young people that come through, and they don't care. They really come through with some amazing ideas. I think you can learn from absolutely everybody. And I love when they come through with some like amazing things. They're super creative. I've been within SAP with Concur for 14 years. So I know this, but there's a lot outside I don't. So you just don't have to be the smartest person in the room. It's okay to be vulnerable.
Fabian, mate, that is a wonderful way to finish. Mate, thanks for everything that you're doing, and we wish you all the best with SAP and the next Jiu-Jitsu competition.
Excellent. Thanks, Greg. I enjoy this.
Okay, Chief, that's it for this week. And a wonderful episode with Fabian Calle, the MD of SAP Concur in ANZ. You can get all the show notes at chiefmaker.com/315. Fabian is the real deal, an honest, true guy who just puts in day after day. He's really humble, he's quite funny, and look, you know what? He just keeps searching for excellence, and that's a great inspiration for all of us. Now, Chief, if you're yet to rate the episode and subscribe, I hope you'll do so soon. It helps others see the magnificent value that the chiefs and gurus on the show bring to their life and career. So make sure you hit subscribe on your podcast app now, give it a 5-star rating if you think it's worthy, and leave a short review about your favourite episode.
Righto, Chief. As always, remember to stay epic.